So the United States doubled in size. Well, how could that be? It was so small to start with. How would it double so quickly? It doubles because of what's called the Louisiana Purchase. Now, the Louisiana Purchase was made by Thomas Jefferson. He bought this whole Louisiana territory from France. If you remember back to the French and Indian War, France had claimed a lot of land in what is now the United States, and the United States wanted the land. And at first we were fighting for it. Well, eventually Thomas Jefferson says, hey, let's go ahead and buy this land from them. So when the Louisiana Purchase was made, Thomas Jefferson did not know what he purchased. He actually had to send explorers out to figure out what this land was like. Was it flat? Were there mountains? Were there rivers? Were there Indians? He needed to find that out. So he sent out a couple of people. He sent out Captain Lewis Meriwether and Captain William Clark. You may know them as Lewis and Clark. He sent them and a group of people to be explorers to the land and to bring back information about the territory they had purchased. So while Lewis and Clark were out exploring, they encountered a lot of Native Americans. And so they needed someone to help them translate the Native American language. And so they made friends with a person named Sacagawea. Sacagawea was an Indian who agreed to go on Lewis and Clark's expedition to translate the Indian languages for them. So we purchased the Louisiana territory from France, but the person who actually sold it to us was a person named Napoleon Bonaparte. Now, Napoleon Bonaparte didn't sell us the Louisiana territory because he was nice and generous. He actually sold us the Louisiana Purchase because he was trying to take over Europe. And in order to take over Europe, he needed more money. So he sold us the Louisiana territory in order to gain money so that he could continue his attempt to take over Europe. So at the same time that all this happened, there was a war happening in Europe. And the war was between the French and the English. And Americans got caught up in this war, and not because they wanted to. What happened was the French, every time an English ship would try to go to England, would stop the ship and not let it go to England. Anytime an English ship would try to go to France, an English ship would stop that ship so that they couldn't go to France. So what was happening here was that the Americans were not being able to travel to Europe for goods, either to take things there or to bring things back to the Americas. This actually causes a problem. What happens is eventually the English warships take over the American warships and take the American sailors as captives and put them to work for them. The American ships had no respect on the seas. No one thought the Americas were strong enough to have a navy, and so they kind of made fun of them. And this put them down, made them feel horrible. So this caused trouble. And so the Americans actually declared war on Europe, or not on Europe, on England. And this war was called the War of 1812. During the War of 1812, the British soldiers actually came over to America, and they actually marched onto the Capitol building in the capital city, and they burnt it down. They actually burnt down the White House and the president's house. Now, the next plan for the British, after marching on and burning down the Capitol, was to go to Baltimore, which is in Maryland. And during that, they actually had what was called the battle at Fort McHenry. This battle was so horrible that there was a lawyer who was actually hiding and watched the whole battle. And as he was watching this battle, his name was Francis Scott Key. It actually brought to him a song. And he wrote a song about the bombs bursting in air and the red glare of light that he saw. And I think you might know that song as our national anthem, the Star-Spangled Banner. The Americans actually won the very last battle of the War of 1812. but neither side won the war. They actually considered it kind of like a tie. But in return for the war, what happens is that the United States actually earns the respect of their Navy. People actually said they can protect themselves. They're not just a bunch of colonists with guns. They actually can protect themselves with a military.